A billionaire who owned everything the world could offer never expected a single phone call to stop his life cold. The hospital voice on the other end said a young waitress had been rushed into emergency surgery after a serious accident, and his number was saved on her phone under one word he had never earned: Dad. In that moment, decades of success felt meaningless as a past he buried long ago came rushing back. He had built an empire but abandoned a responsibility that money could never replace. The girl who had grown up without him still believed enough to save his name with hope instead of anger. Was it a mistake or the truth he had been running from all his life? Because when money can't fix what's broken, only courage and humanity can decide what happens next. The call came on a morning that was supposed to be ordinary, but it shattered a lifetime of carefully controlled silence in just a few seconds. A billionaire who owned glass towers, private jets, and entire industries stood frozen in his penthouse office as a hospital voice informed him that a young waitress had been rushed into emergency surgery after a terrible accident, and his number was saved in her phone under one single word that changed everything: Dad. The word echoed louder than any boardroom argument, louder than any stock market crash he had survived, because it struck at the one place he had spent decades avoiding. He had built an empire from nothing, but he had buried his past so deeply that he believed it could never reach him again. And yet, in that moment, the past was not knocking, it had kicked the door open. If this story already makes your heart pause for a moment, then take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of humanity. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts that need them. For years, the world had known him as a self-made legend, a man whose name appeared on business magazines and charitable donor lists, though few knew he donated more out of guilt than generosity. He had grown up poor, the kind of poor where dreams were a luxury and survival was the only plan. He worked, he climbed, he sacrificed everything, including love, morality, and responsibility, until he became untouchable. Somewhere along the way, he left behind a young woman who loved him when he was nothing, a woman whose tears he never witnessed because he chose ambition over accountability. He never asked what happened to her after he walked away, and he certainly never asked if there had been consequences to that decision. Men like him convinced themselves that unanswered questions were safer than painful truths. The hospital explained that the waitress had collapsed at work after fainting, hitting her head hard against the floor. Her co-workers found her phone while trying to identify an emergency contact. Among all the contacts, one name stood out, saved with hope rather than certainty. The hospital did not accuse, did not judge, but the weight of implication crushed him harder than any legal threat ever could. He could have hung up, could have sent an assistant, could have denied everything, but something inside him cracked, not dramatically, not loudly, but in a quiet, irreversible way. For the first time in decades, he felt fear that had nothing to do with losing money. The drive to the hospital felt longer than any international flight he had taken. He watched the city blur past the tinted windows, suddenly noticing people he had ignored his entire life. Waitresses walking to work, tired mothers holding children, men standing at bus stops with lunchboxes. These were not background characters anymore. Somewhere among them was a young woman who shared his blood, his mistakes, and his absence. He realized that while he had been building skyscrapers, someone else had been building a life without him, struggling, surviving, hoping in silence. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and reality. No private wings, no luxury treatment, just crowded hallways and exhausted staff. He stood there in a tailored suit that cost more than most people's monthly salaries, feeling painfully out of place. A nurse confirmed the name, the age, and the condition. Early 20s, severe concussion, internal bleeding that required immediate surgery. A waitress working double shifts to cover rent and tuition. Every detail landed like a verdict. This was not a coincidence. This was consequence. As he waited, memories surfaced that he had trained himself to suppress. The woman he once loved was brave, hopeful, and stubbornly optimistic. She believed in him when no one else did. When she told him she was pregnant, he had seen it as a threat rather than a miracle. He chose money over responsibility, telling himself that he was not ready, that she would manage, that life would sort itself out. And life had sorted itself out, just not in the way he had imagined. It had sorted itself into a young woman pouring coffee for strangers, saving his number under a title he had never earned. Hours passed in that waiting room, stripping him of all the power he thought he possessed. No amount of wealth could speed up surgery or undo years of absence. When the doctor finally came out and said the surgery was successful, but recovery would be long and uncertain, relief mixed with shame in a way that left him breathless. She was alive. That was the only thing that mattered now. But being alive did not erase the damage. It only gave space for healing, if healing was even possible. He was allowed to see her briefly. Tubes, bandages, machines humming softly around a fragile body that looked nothing like the image he had unconsciously created in his mind. She was smaller, paler, exhausted, but unmistakably real. He did not touch her. He did not speak. He simply stood there, overwhelmed by the realization that this was not about proving anything to the world. This was about facing the human cost of his choices. As he left the room, one question haunted him relentlessly. Why had she saved his number as Dad when he had never acted like one? The answer frightened him more than rejection ever could. Because hope, even when disappointed, often refuses to die.
The days that followed were some of the quietest and loudest of his life at the same time. Quiet because no reporters knew where he was. No business meetings demanded his attention. No public appearances needed his carefully crafted smile. Loud because his thoughts screamed at him constantly, replaying every moment he had ignored, every responsibility he had abandoned, every chance he had refused to take. He began visiting the hospital daily, always at a distance, never announcing himself, watching nurses move around the young woman who unknowingly carried his name in her phone like a fragile secret. He learned her story without speaking to her. He learned that she worked 2 jobs, one at a diner and another at a bookstore, that she was studying part-time, that she sent money to her mother every month. He learned that she had grown up without a father, had asked questions her mother answered gently but vaguely, never poisoning her with bitterness. He learned that despite everything, she believed people could be good, even the ones who left. That belief cut deeper than any accusation ever could. When she finally woke up, confused and frightened, he stayed away, afraid that his presence would do more harm than good. He arranged the best doctors quietly, paid every bill anonymously, upgraded her room without explanation. For the first time, his money was not a weapon or a shield, but a tool of care. Yet it felt insufficient. You cannot buy back years. You cannot outsource accountability. One afternoon, as she regained strength, a nurse mentioned that the young woman had asked if the person saved as Dad had been contacted. The word Dad again. It followed him everywhere. He realized that the name was not a claim. It was a question that only he could answer now. He decided to write a letter. Not an apology written by lawyers or public relations experts, but a raw confession he had never allowed himself to feel. He wrote about fear, about immaturity, about the lies men tell themselves when they run from responsibility. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not demand understanding. He simply acknowledged her existence and his failure. He left the letter with the nurse, unsigned but honest, unsure if she would ever read it or want to know who wrote it. When she did read it, something shifted. She cried quietly, not from shock, but from validation. Her entire life, she had carried a missing piece, an unanswered why. The letter did not fix the past, but it confirmed that she had not imagined the absence. That mattered more than she realized. Their first real meeting happened days later, not dramatic, not confrontational, not cinematic in the traditional sense, just two people sitting in the same room, bound by blood and years of silence. He expected anger, he expected rejection. What he encountered instead was cautious curiosity mixed with pain. She did not need him to be a hero, she needed him to be real. He listened more than he spoke. For once, he did not try to control the narrative. He heard about birthdays without calls, school events with empty seats, moments when she imagined him watching from afar. Each story humbled him further. This was not about his redemption arc. This was about her healing. As weeks turned to months, recovery became both physical and emotional. He helped her return to school, supported her ambitions without dictating them, showed up consistently without making promises he could not keep. Slowly, trust formed, fragile and cautious, like a bridge built plank by plank over deep water. He began changing too, not in public gestures or charity headlines, but in private choices. He downsized his schedule, redefined success, confronted parts of himself he had long ignored. Wealth had made him powerful, but fatherhood, even this late, was teaching him humility.
Time did what money never could. It softened edges, allowed wounds to scar instead of bleed, and made space for a relationship that did not erase the past, but learned to coexist with it. She never called him Dad out loud at first. The word remained heavy, sacred, and earned slowly. He never asked for it. He understood that some titles are not claimed, they are granted. Years later, she graduated. He sat in the audience, unnoticed by most, tears quietly escaping a man the world believed incapable of them. He did not feel proud of himself, he felt proud of her, and that difference meant everything. The story did not end with perfection. They argued, they struggled, they healed unevenly, but they chose presence over absence, truth over silence, effort over excuses. The waitress became more than her job title. The billionaire became more than his bank balance, and a single saved contact name became the beginning of accountability rather than a reminder of failure. Before this story ends, take a moment to comment below and share what part of this journey moved you the most. Your words matter more than you think. If this story touched your heart, if it made you reflect on second chances, lost connections, or the power of showing up before it is too late, please like, share, and engage with this video. Your interaction helps stories like this reach people who might need hope today. Sometimes, the most powerful call we receive is not from a hospital, but from the part of ourselves we have been avoiding, and answering it can change more than one life forever.